I would like to show you one of the most famous games of the World Champion Mikhail Botvinnik. In this game, Botvinnik sacrificed both of his rooks almost in the opening, in order to carry out a deadly attack on the enemy king, and the game was over on move 26. Botvinnik played the English opening, c4, and his opponent Lajos Portisch played e5. Knight c3, knight f6, g3, d5, c takes d, knight takes d5, bishop g2. White is going to exert pressure on the long diagonal and on the half-open c-file. Bishop e6, knight f3 attacking the pawn on e5, knight c6 defending it, short castle, knight b6, d3, bishop e7, a3 taking under control the b4 square and preparing the advance of the b pawn, which might be quite unpleasant for black. That's why Portisch played a5, preventing it. Bishop e3, short castle and knight a4. The idea of this move is to move away the knight from c3 so that it doesn't block the rooks, and also white is threatening quite unpleasant invasion on the c5 square. That's why Portisch captures on a4. But now Botvinnik simply wins a tempo. Queen takes a4, developing the queen with tempo. So as you can see, white is actually playing the dragon variation with an extra tempo, because Botvinnik is playing the dragon with white pieces. Portisch played bishop d5 and rook c1, so Botvinnik starts doubling his rooks on the c-file. After rook e8, he plays rook c2, vacating the c1 square for the second rook. And here comes a mistake by Portisch. He played bishop f8. It would have been much better to play bishop d6, so that the bishop on d6 defends the c7 square, because white is going to play rook c1 and exert tremendous pressure on this square. And after bishop f8, which was the case in the game, the knight wouldn't be able to move away, because as soon as it moves, after white plays rook c1, white would simply capture on c7. That's why after bishop d6, the pawn would have been defended, so for this reason bishop d6 would have been much stronger. But Portisch played bishop f8, rook c1 of course, and now white's pressure on the c-file is very unpleasant. And Portisch decided to solve this problem once and for all. He played knight b8, leaving the c7 pawn unguarded. However, if white captures on c7, then Portisch prepared bishop c6, attacking the queen and breaking the communication between the c7 rook and c1 rook. And after the queen moves, Portisch was going to capture on c7, capture the rook on c7. And besides that, the idea of knight b8 is to play c6 next move. And if black manages to play c6, then the pressure on the c-file would be ineffective and black would solve his problems. And now, taking into consideration all this, that Portisch is going to play c6 next move, you can pause the video and try to find Botvinnik's great idea. So he still captured on c7, and after bishop c6, you can see Botvinnik's idea. What to do? The queen is under attack and the rook is under attack. But Botvinnik prepared the sacrifice of both of his rooks. First, he eliminates the valuable light-squared bishop, rook takes c6, and after b takes c, his second rook is under attack, but Botvinnik prepared rook takes f7, demolishing black's king side, weakening it, terribly weakening it, and starting a deadly attack. It turns out that black cannot capture the rook. After king takes f7, simply, as you see, the f7 pawn disappeared, this diagonal is extremely weak, and of course the queen will exploit that. Queen c4 check, the king cannot return to his castle, it cannot move to e7 or f6 because of simple bishop g5 check, and black would lose the queen. That's why the only move would be king g6, but queen g4 check, king f7, knight g5 check. Now, if king e7, then of course checkmate in 1, and the king cannot return to his castle. Neither, because simply queen c4 check, followed by checkmate after knight f7 check, knight h6 double check, and checkmate. That's why after rook takes f7, Portisch of course didn't capture the rook. Instead, he played h6, taking under control the g5 square, so that the white knight cannot jump there. but Botvinnik simply moved away his rook. The rook has finished its mission successfully, rook b7. The f7 pawn disappeared, the diagonal is catastrophically weakened, and not only the diagonal, all the light squares are terribly weakened. After h6, the light squares have become even weaker. So now the king will become a target of attack, of course. Portisch played queen c8, attacking the rook, but considering the terrible weakness of the light squares, Botvinnik sacrificed the rook one more time. Queen c4 check. Now if queen e6, closing the queen's diagonal, then simply knight takes e5, and after the exchange of the queens, it turns out that for the sacrificed exchange, white has 3 pawns, which is more than enough, and also positionally white is dominating. Black pieces are all placed on the 8th rank, while white pieces are extremely active, so that would have been completely hopeless for black. That's why after queen c4 check, Portisch played king h8, but now Botvinnik sacrifices his rook. He leaves it under attack and plays knight h4, starting a deadly attack. So the knight is going to jump on the weakened g6 square. Portisch accepted the sacrifice this time, but knight g6 check, the only move, king h7, bishop e4, with a terrible threat of the discovered attack, discovered check, knight e7 check, and after king moves, then checkmate, of course, as the knight controls the g8 square. That's why Portisch played bishop d6, so that the rook defends the g8 square, but now, of course, knight takes e5 with discovered check. If king h8, then simply knight f7 check, and knight takes d6, discovered check, and black is losing the queen. That's why after knight takes e5 check, Portisch played g6, but of course now bishop takes g6 check, and after king g7, the final blow, bishop takes h6 check, sacrificing the bishop. It turns out that after king takes h6, queen h4 check, and queen h7 check, black is losing the queen. That's why after bishop takes h6 check, Portisch resigned. And now I recommend watching the second game of 1951 World Championship match, in which Botvinnik found hidden resources of active defense and created counterplay in a worse position. But first, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, as it's really helpful for the channel growth.